Hi there, it's Adam here. I just want to have a little quick word about what a drag king is. So, a drag king is a performance artist that performs maleness and or masculinity for performance. And we do it really broadly with loads and loads of different kinds of techniques and medias and strengths and talents. Singing, juggling, lip syncing, comedy, dance, fire eating, magic, you name it. The medium doesn't really matter. What matters is that we're discussing gender. We're discussing gender, particularly maleness and masculinity. We're talking about it. And we're talking about it in a way that is liberating and positive, and also disentangling toxic masculinity from true masculinity and maleness. And we constantly talk about it all the time. It's one of the major topics of conversation, mostly because many of us at some point in our lives, many of us, not all, have for some reason or other received very serious negative feedback on ourselves because of our masculinity. Now, I know that might seem really shocking because you'd think that where we live in a patriarchal society, maleness is deemed to be somehow more powerful and more important, and therefore people who exhibit masculinity are held in higher esteem, and actually that isn't true. That isn't true if you're AFAB, if you're assigned female at birth. If you're assigned female at birth, your masculinity is deeply ridiculed. In fact, if you identify as female but still have masculine traits, your identity is ridiculed. It is ridiculed and diminished. Your voice is diminished. Your worth is diminished. Your position is diminished. Over and over and over again. To the point that if I exhibit behaviours or skills that are considered to live mostly in the male domain, I am considered to be somehow usurping power that isn't mine and emasculating the men around me, which is not my goal. Guess what? I'm just trying to be good at shit. This kind of behaviour really, from a very young age, if it happens to you a lot, it can be extremely damaging to your confidence as a human being. But not just your confidence as a human being, you unlearn how to be around people because they don't know how to approach you or address you, and constantly keep reminding you that if you only just grow your hair out or dress every now and then, I'm sure you'd get a boyfriend. I know that when I was young, things were a little different than they are today for a lot of people, but not for all. In fact, I know that for some people nothing has changed, and that it's just like it was when I was a kid in the 80s and the 90s. I became a drag king to talk about those things, not just talk about my maleness and masculinity, but maleness and masculinity in general. And I really, really honestly think that one of the most toxic pollutants in this world is toxic masculinity. And it needs to be disentangled from nutritious masculinity, real maleness. It needs to be disentangled and unlearned so that we can all heal. Just like we need to take the plastic out the sea. You know, it's really difficult for me to watch a show where someone is being dressed up like a drag king, but in a way that doesn't really reflect our community or our art form, giving no props to the people who actually do it, and then feeling like now not only has my voice been diminished, it's been silenced, taken from me and given to someone else who doesn't understand what I've been through or why I'm doing this. Literally has no background. I would just really like people to understand that the work that we're doing, the things that we're talking about, for the most part, we're making it as universal as we humanly can. This is not specific to a particular audience. Everyone is damaged by toxic masculinity. Even the people who portray it. So isn't it time kings had a say and had a platform? Isn't it time that we started to heal? And I'm normally a pretty happy-go-lucky sort of guy. I don't tend to get really serious about this kind of stuff, but I am very passionate about drag kings. And over the last year, I've lost a lot of that passion and had to re-find it. And it was kindled in me again when I spoke to my mate Romeo yesterday. We got really into it about how let down we feel by the broader LGBTQIA plus community. Still constantly going on about RuPaul's Drag Race and drag queens and how it's so much harder for men to dress as women, and it's so much and you know, using language like that, and it's like, do you know what? No, it isn't harder, because that's someone coming from a place of power and taking a different kind of power for themselves. Whereas that's not what I'm doing. I'm not coming from a place of power at all. I'm coming from a place of total misunderstanding, of misreading, of misgendering, of silencing. I'm coming from a place of hurt. I'm coming from a place where I have been offered no redemption for my behaviour at all whatsoever. Almost no role models, almost no way of saying, yeah, but I'm still happy being me, and there's nothing wrong with who I am, and I haven't failed as a person because I don't fit what you expect me to be. I'm coming from there. and forcing myself into a place of power by holding a room with entertainment. Hopefully joy and laughter and fun. I mean, probably not now because we're being quite serious. But I'm trying to forge a place of confidence and self-power and self-affirmation so that I can then speak about maleness and masculinity and how it can belong to anyone. And it is not limited to people who identify as male, just as femininity doesn't belong solely to people who identify as female. It has to go both ways. If I want to be masculine because that's how I am, and I want to behave outwardly like that in public because that's how I am, and that should not be ridiculed. I shouldn't be teased and bullied for that. I shouldn't be unsupported. I shouldn't be bottom of the pile to get hired. I shouldn't be the oddball. They broke the mould when they made that one. That's what they told me when I was a kid. And I knew it meant there was something wrong with me. And I learned very quickly what that was. You know, we live in a world where the queer community is massively dominated by male presence. And that actually people believe that female or AFAB queers are just fewer and further between, they don't really exist, or in fact that they don't need a community hub or a space or safe space even really particularly to exist because they're more integrated into society and they don't face prejudice in the same way. We only really talk about the fact that femininity in men is ridiculed and therefore it affects this group of people. We don't talk about how masculinity in women is ridiculed. We don't talk about how belittling it can be to be told that your masculinity is not only ugly and wrong, that it is damaging to other people. I love drag kings. I love working with drag kings. I love meeting drag kings. I love meeting someone who really wants to be a drag king, who turns around to me and says, I've never seen this before, but you've just clicked everything for me. Because the passion in them is overflowing. And do you know what's really interesting about that? These are often extremely introverted people who would never have spoken to someone who's just stepped off a stage ever in their life. They never would have had the backbone to step up to someone and say, I really want to say thank you to you because that really changed my life. And do you know what? It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are not supporting a huge swathe of our community. We're not supporting them. And actually without drag kings, there is almost no representation for them on the stage. It seems very strange to me. It seems really odd. I want it to change and I'm getting tired of fighting, but I still believe in the fight. So I just wanted to pop on and say something more heartfelt because I joke and I have fun and a lot of my videos are about humour and flying through the sky with silly shoes on, and that's all fine and good. But sometimes I need to just spell it out. I own who I am, and I use this performance to talk about where I've been restricted and how that's wrong, and also how maleness, masculinity are not intrinsically toxic in any way. That toxic masculinity is a learned trait that can be dropped, that can be unlearned. Anyway, back to the funny shit.